Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Americas. Here's a look at what's coming up in today's show. The crowded presidential race for the Democrats now even more crowded, with South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg officially throwing his hat into the ring. More on the Wonder Boy, who could be the country's first openly gay president, on the way. Then the U.S. is on track to its worst measles outbreak in 20 years. And that's pushed New York officials to slap those refusing the vaccine with a $1,000 fine. And the country that was once a main departure point for the slave trade is now courting African Americans to move there. A look at Ghana's year of return coming up. I'm Jeannie Godula. Our picture of the week is this one. U.S. Democrat Pete Buttigieg embracing his husband Chasten just after Pete announced he was running for president. It was a historic moment for the man who could become the first openly gay president of the United States. Pete Buttigieg is the mayor of the small town of South Bend, Indiana, and he's become the one to watch in the increasingly crowded presidential race. Sanam Chantier reports.
My name is Pete Buttigieg. They call me Mayor Pete. I am a proud son of South Bend, Indiana, and I am running for President of the United States.
As personalities and political thinkers, Pete Buttigieg and the incumbent President Donald Trump are very different.
The reality is there's no
but what they have in common is their love for the spotlight.
The show in Washington right now is exhausting. The corruption, the fighting, the lying, the crisis, it's got to end.
The 37-year-old two-term mayor of South Bend, Indiana, made his first splash 5 years ago. In 2014, the Washington Post called him the most interesting mayor you've never heard of. Today, everywhere you look in America, you see Pete Buttigieg, and questions are being asked as to whether he can become the first openly gay president of the U.S.
A homosexual mayor running for president, I think that's really bold.
I see him as a unifying force, which is really what we need in this time.
It's exciting to see people excited and saying like, man, Mayor Pete's putting us on the map.
Buttigieg often appears beside his husband, displaying public affection. Another question being asked, how do you pronounce Pete Buttigieg? There's even a song about it uploaded by a Twitter user. Buttigieg served in Afghanistan as a counter-terrorism officer for 7 months. Also, he's a graduate of Harvard and Oxford and speaks 7 languages, including Norwegian, Arabic, French and Dari, a variant of Persian spoken primarily in Afghanistan. Now, while Democrats might say in hope Buttigieg is capable of winning over the middle of the country, there's already much pressure on him to define what he stands for. Up until now, Buttigieg has only mentioned a handful of policies, including a form of national public service for young adults and expanding the Supreme Court.
And while the Democrat field keeps on growing, Donald Trump got the first challenge from within his own party this week. Former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld announced he's now seeking the Republican nomination for 2020. Weld ran for vice president 2 years ago for the Libertarian Party. The move by the 73-year-old makes Trump the first incumbent president since George H.W. Bush in 1992 to face a major primary challenge. Time now for our number of the week, 555. That is the number of confirmed cases of measles this year in the U.S., announced Monday by the Center for Disease Control. The measles outbreak jumped by nearly 20% last week and is now on pace to be the worst since the disease was eradicated there almost 20 years ago. The epicenter of the outbreak is in New York, with most cases stemming from unvaccinated Orthodox Jews. Anca Ulea reports now on the extraordinary measures officials are taking to keep the epidemic from spreading.
When it comes to measles in the United States, this is ground zero. More than 90% of U.S. cases since October were reported in New York City and Rockland County to its north, mostly in Orthodox Jewish communities. City and county officials are taking drastic measures to contain the disease, declaring a state of emergency. This week, Rockland County banned unvaccinated people who've been exposed to measles from public gathering spaces for up to 3 weeks.
And we're saying you cannot leave under penalty of $2,000 per day for violation. To be told that we should wait for someone to die because of this disease is absolutely beyond belief.
The order came a day after New York City closed a Jewish preschool for not turning over its vaccination and attendance records. Measles vaccines are now mandatory in New York neighborhoods where the outbreak has been particularly aggressive. But those orders have been met with lawsuits from parents who claim that vaccines can lead to health problems or even death.
What's the basis for saying no to vaccinations?
Oh, I could go on and on and on. I don't know if I have all the time. Just like I said now, that preventative measures are not a reason to inject toxins into my child's body.
The long-running and well-debunked myth that vaccines cause autism or otherwise hurt children has become prevalent among Orthodox Jews, but not for religious reasons. Rather, the tight-knit and insular community has fallen prey to anti-vaccination propaganda, and repeated close contact between members has allowed measles to spread like wildfire. Health officials have been trying to change this by working with Jewish organizations to inform and providing free vaccination.
So when people become informed and hear from the rabbinic leadership of the community, get vaccinated, they're getting vaccinated.
But the outbreak is already well on its way to becoming the worst since measles was eradicated in 2000.
Next now to Venezuela, where this week the very first shipment of humanitarian aid from the Red Cross finally arrived. 24 tons of emergency supplies were flown in from Panama and will be delivered to hospitals that are struggling to cope with equipment shortages and power outages. The international aid delivery has become a focal point in Venezuela's power struggle that's now in its third month since opposition leader Juan Guaido declared himself interim president. Both the opposition and the government have been accused of politicizing the issue. Next to Ghana, a country that was once one of the main departure points of the slave trade. Today, Ghana is reaching out to African Americans who are thinking about making a move to Africa. And as James Vicina explains now, they've even dubbed 2019 the year of return.
Returning to the land of their forefathers in search of inner peace. It's taken time for Cicely Williams to adapt to her new life in Ghana, but she was pushed to make the move, saying she no longer felt at home back in the United States.
Right at that time where we had a lot of killings of black males and black females by the police. Trump was just getting into office. So at that time, my family and I decided that we were ready to come back.
The Cape Coast Castle was once one of the main departure points for slaves that were being sent to America. Tens of thousands of Africans left the continent from this very hall.
Right, so if you survived your stay here, this was going to be your last point of call, door of no return.
It's become somewhat of a pilgrimage site as more and more Americans journey here to learn about their history.
You know why I am African. Or how you became African. She knows now that this is real.
Ghana has labelled 2019 the year of return. The government aims to attract more of the African diaspora, just like Candice and Stephen Williams, who left Baltimore 2 years ago. A radical change, they've even adopted new names.
Welcome back home.
Thank you.
What's your local name?
My local name is Kojo.
Kojo. I'm Kofi.
The market organizer is thrilled to see that Americans are moving here.
They've been out of the continent for a very long time. They've acquired a lot of knowledge. Africans still need a lot of knowledge to develop it. Yeah, we've seen a lot, so we are happy. And I, for one, am happy.
But despite his warm welcome, integrating into Ghanaian society hasn't been as straightforward as they'd expected.
You know, because of our complexion or our accent, some people refer to us as white. You know, they don't know what a black American is.
And despite being swamped in red tape and the trouble of finding a job, the former instructor has no regrets.
You can see my hair was a lot shorter then.
Their children and grandchildren have all stayed behind.
There's no better place to be for me than on the land of my origin.
Why?
Because I am an African woman.
They've even done a DNA test to find out more about their African ancestry.
I believe this one is yours.
The couple are planning on starting an organisation to help other African Americans who want to make the move to Ghana. Nathania took the leap over 20 years ago, when he moved here from New York.
This place, we started it in around 1995 or thereabout, and there was nothing but coconut trees and high grass here.
He opened this hotel near the Cape Coast Castle. He's seen generations of African Americans settle here and says misconceptions about the continent are almost a thing of the past.
African Americans are now opening up to the reality that Africa is not a land filled with jungles and people living in tree houses, and you know, people are seeing that there's real development and growth and opportunity going on in Africa.
Some are looking to reconnect with their past, while others seek new opportunities. Several thousands of African Americans have already made the move, and the trend is showing no sign of slowing down.
And we'll leave you now in Cuba, where a sidewalk in Havana has turned into an art gallery. More than a kilometer of the walkway was covered in art by dozens of artists for the work called Behind the Wall. It's part of a month-long event on Now, bringing together 500 Cuban artists and 300 more from around the world. We'll leave you with those pictures. Thanks for watching Inside the Americas. See you next time for more.
Je regarde France 24 parce qu'en tant qu'étudiante en sciences politiques, ça me permet de rester à jour sur les informations dans le monde, sur les conflits, les débats politiques, tout ça.
الاختلاف بين فرانس 24 والقنوات التانية في المحتوى المتنوع وفي التوجه الأقرب للحيادية.
I like their coverage, especially with the news and the politics, but also I like the cultural aspect because that, me as a Kenyan, I get to learn a lot about Francophone, Africa, Francophone in general, whether it's in Europe or here, just from France 24.
France 24 m'aide à voir une perspective plus complète du monde et à comprendre différentes langues et différentes cultures.
France 24, with you everywhere, all the time.